Failed gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake got a harsh reality check this week thanks to the results of a new analysis of the state of Arizona's 2022 election results. And what the researchers found was that it wasn't because of theft, as Lake has claimed. It wasn't because of misprinted ballots. The reason she lost was actually much simpler than that. It was simply because Republicans in the state didn't like her. As one of the researchers who put together this report said, she just ran a terrible campaign. It doesn't help to call Republicans rhinos. So basically, what the researcher is saying is, listen, Kari, when you're insulting Republicans as rhinos, you're not just attacking those politicians that don't support Donald Trump, because that's pretty much what rhino, Republican in name only, has come to mean these days. You're attacking the voters themselves when you use those words. And guess what? Turns out voters don't like being called names. So here is what they found. This is according to Raw Story here, or Newsweek, a Newsweek analysis of it. Democrat Katie Hobbs managed to pick up support from more than 33,000 Republican-leaning voters in Maricopa County who backed GOP candidates in other state elections, such as state treasurer. Lake, by comparison, gained only 5,953 Democrat-leaning voters. Around 6,000 Republican-leaning voters also chose not to vote at all or write in another candidate rather than support Lake this past November. Kari Lake, of course, lost by 17,000 votes. So, if she had not lost those 33,000 Republican-leaning voters in Maricopa County, she would have won. Even if she had only not lost half of those Republican-leaning voters, she may have been able to win if, of course, she didn't have the 6,000 who said, I'm going to vote for a different Republican. I'm going to write somebody else in, or I'm going to leave it blank because I can't stomach the thought of voting for you, but I also don't want to vote for a Democrat. So that's what happened, Kari. And by the way, I know you're still trying to appeal your lawsuit that got thrown out seeking to overturn the election results. This study is not going to help. In fact, this study is probably the death knell for your lawsuit because it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that you were, in fact, rejected by those voters. Now, think about that. Think about how unpopular Kari Lake had to have been for tens of thousands. We're talking about almost 40,000 Republican voters, 39,000 to be exact, looked at her and said, no. 33,000 said, I'm going to vote for Katie Hobbs. I'm going to vote for a Democrat, but I'm going to keep voting Republican down the rest of the ballot. And of course, 6,000 said, I'm not voting Republican or Democrat, but I will be voting Republican down the rest of the ballot. Because I'm a good Republican voter, but you, Kari Lake, have turned me off so much that I simply cannot do this. In addition to Kari Lake running a campaign where, of course, she insulted Republican voters by calling them rhinos, she also didn't really map out any kind of policy platform at all. She kept harping on the 2020 election results, said, we're going to get to the bottom of that, and voters were like, the bottom of it is we voted against him. So there you go. How about some policies on education that extend beyond the culture wars? How about real economic policy that extends beyond giving the wealthy tax breaks? Those are things Kari Lake was unable to deliver. And I do think it's important to point this out because Kari Lake basically was running a no-platform campaign. And she got torpedoed for it. Meanwhile, you have people like Ron DeSantis over here in Florida who ran a strictly culture war campaign. He wins by 1.5 million votes, but it makes you wonder, can something like that play in Arizona? Because it didn't. Ron DeSantis didn't have any actual platforms. He had culture war crap, and of course, Kari Lake did similar things, not exactly to the same extent. But it shows that just because somebody like DeSantis is popular in the state of Florida it doesn't necessarily translate to nationwide success, and that's the big takeaway. The big takeaway from this report has nothing to do with Kari Lake, to be honest with you. It shows that Republican voters are tired of the nonsensical BS that Republican candidates are feeding them all the time, and they are more than willing to let them know that at the ballot box. That is bad news for all Republicans, not just Kari Lake. Hi everyone, this here is little Athena, and Athena would like to know why you haven't subscribed to Fair and Balanced yet, so please don't let Athena down. Subscribe today.